everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Queensborough President Donovan Richards. President Richards, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
There's some big news out of the Big Apple this week, and I'm really excited to get your take on it because just a few days ago, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani unveiled his budget for the fiscal year 2027. It sits at $127 billion. The biggest news, though, to come out of that press conference where he unveiled that massive budget was the ultimatum he issued Albany and essentially the state's governor, Kathy Hochul. He said that either she raised taxes on the richest New Yorkers and the most profitable corporations, or property taxes would go up by 9.5%. Start off the conversation. What are your thoughts here on both that budget and the ultimatum?
Well, I would say that middle-class homeowners, in particular, I would say, especially homeowners of color, we've always bore a brunt on the unfair property tax system that exists in the city, period. So you can have a homeowner in Southeast Queens paying more taxes than some brownstone owner in Brooklyn whose property is worth $5 million. So I agree with the mayor that we need to tackle this in totality. I was part of the property tax reform task force under the de Blasio administration. I actually was one of, I think, 5 elected officials who also sued the city, and the mayor fought us on that during that period where he told us we could only represent ourselves in personal capacity. So we were trying to take some bold action on finally addressing what we see as the disparities in the tax system. Moving forward, yesterday was sort of, I was totally torn aback about the 9.5% increase in property taxes, which really would have a disproportionate impact on Queens, being that more than half Queens residents are homeowners. Everything is too damn high as it is, whether it's the water bill, whether it's your heating, electricity. So you're technically, by adding a 9.5% property tax increase, driving New Yorkers out of the city.
I've been a New Yorker now for 10 years, and there's a running joke amongst New Yorkers. You walk outside and you're charged $40. That's how unaffordable this city really feels for a lot of people. And when you're thinking about Queens in particular, you're saying that so many of your constituents are homeowners. What are their responses to this budget and proposal and the ultimatum?
I think it was jaw-dropping, quite frankly, yesterday. I think if I'm a senior citizen on a fixed income, I'm trying to figure out what the hell am I going to do. I have to pay for my medicine. I'm just holding on. And the surprising part yesterday was that the mayor ran on this affordability platform, right? And home ownership has to be a part of that. And one of the ways that many residents in Queens County in particular build generational wealth is through their home, right? So they may have grass, but really our income is in our home. And we want to ensure that we're not losing, just as we've seen the numbers, 200,000 Black New Yorkers left New York City over the course of the last decade, partially because of this affordability crisis. And I don't even want to stick this just on homeowners, right? Because if you're renting a basement apartment and you're living a home, the owner's going to obviously increase your rent. If you're living in a multifamily dwelling, a 1 to 4 multifamily dwelling, guess what? Those renters are going to see an increase in their rent. So we should not be, the middle class should not be a bargaining chip through these negotiations. I think there are ways that he can look at other cost saving measures. For instance, he did hire we call it CSOs, which are individuals who are looking at, what are some efficiencies that we can recognize in these agencies. The bottom line is, could we go back to the governor? I think Assemblymember Carl Hastie has been very clear in saying that we're not going to leave the city on a ledge. We're gonna make sure that we don't leave the city behind. So we need to work with our legislative leaders. I'm all for taxing the rich, by the way. If he can figure that out, God bless him. It's been talked about for a long time. I'm holding my breath on that one. But at the end of the day, we cannot put this burden on the backs of homeowners in this city.
I do want to get to the tax the rich component of this, but before that, I want to tie up the home ownership component, because that was a core tenet of the American dream, right? People work to eventually afford to buy a home. If I hear I want to buy a home, there's a threat dangling that property taxes would go up 9.5%. I mean, would this deter people from buying homes? And then in turn, would this deter people from even coming to New York City to renting homes? Because as you said, this burden could very well be passed off to renters.
Oh, absolutely. And, we saw the chill effect in 2008 when we had the housing market crash, right? And the foreclosures skyrocketed in places like Southeast Queens and in central Brooklyn, and you had redlining. So all of these disparities have already been a barrier to, especially people of color, Black and Brown communities, getting access to home ownership, right? Now we start to see this cuts across the board now, whether you're Black or brown or white, young. We always had this assumption growing up when we looked at our parents or grandparents. If you work hard in the city, you go to college, you get a good job, you should have be able to obtain home ownership. Home ownership has largely been out of reach for a long time for especially the new generation of New Yorkers who are coming up now. So in order for us to maintain this generational wealth and to grow that, especially in Black and Brown communities, who've only recently, over the course of the last 5 decades, really been able to own a home, we need to make sure that we are strengthening opportunities for communities of color. We need to make sure that affordability is mixed in with not just rentals, but a pathway to affordable home ownership, something we're working on with the governor at the former Creedmoor site, 50 acres we're going to be developing. A lot of that will be affordable home ownership opportunities so that we can try to enable our young people and communities to have to reach and be able to obtain home ownership. And when you look at the pricing of homes, by the way, you're talking $700,000 to $800,000, right? Almost $1 million. So we have to focus in on affordable home ownership. And yes, if this plan went through, this would one be a deterrent for people to not be able to own homes, but then two, you're looking at really squeezing everyday New Yorkers' pockets, and you're going to put them into a situation where we'll have tax liens and foreclosures rising, especially in communities of color.
And that price tag alone is a non-starter for a lot of New Yorkers, right? $700,000 to $800,000 for a home. But Mayor Mamdani, he ran on a platform where he wanted to make New York more affordable. He wanted to remember the forgotten New Yorker. You're saying, hey, this ultimatum here, this could disproportionately hurt Black and Brown communities. Has he received that message? What has his response been to that, if he has?
Well, I spoken to him. I spoke to him yesterday. I was at the budget briefing with him, and I made it very clear. I didn't bite my tongue on this. That this is a non-starter, and I think you're starting to hear a lot of the political class, whether you're Republican, conservative, progressive, who are saying, no, 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 no. We cannot absorb this amount of an increase. And let's be creative. Let's look at this March. I think he has a March 19th deadline with these officers he's assigning to all the agencies. Let's see what they come back with, right? I once again want to acknowledge that he made it clear he wants to take on the unfair property tax system. I am 100% in his corner, as I told him yesterday on that. Count me in, I'm there. Taxing the rich, you want to do that? I'm there. You got to get the governor there. You got to get the state legislature there. But this is an agenda you ran on and you have to own. I mean, people really voted for Mayor Mamdani because he ran on this promise that he would work to make this city more affordable. So I hope that this is not a telltale sign of him moving backwards on many of those campaign promises.
What was his response to that? Because to your point, there has been backlash to this, Republicans and Democrats alike. I mean, it's hard to find someone who was vocally supporting this budget plan, especially with that ultimatum. What did he say to when you confronted him about how this would hurt minority communities?
Yeah, he made it clear. He made it clear that this is a nuclear option, that he absolutely does not want this to be the first option on the table. However, as the leader of Queens County, 2.4 million people, my constituents are hearing this. So once you put this on the table, you really are creating alarm. Whether it's a false alarm or not, you put that out into the environment. and people are already feeling stretched. People I've talked to yesterday, like 9.5, like they're just trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills now and stay in the city. So whether this is a nuclear option or not, he presented it, and I made it clear that we can never stand in support of this. And once again, I will stand with you on taxing the rich each and every day. I will stand with you on property tax reform, but I cannot disproportionately um, stand with you on something that is going to drive the wealth gap even further than where it's at right now in the city.
I want to talk about that tax the rich component because that's what he wants Governor Kathy Hochul to do. Tax the 33,000 New Yorkers making above $1 million a year. Tax them 2% increase there. Also tax the richest, most profitable corporations in New York. You're for that. Do you think Governor Kathy Hochul will get on board? Do you think she should?
I will let the governor speak for herself, but I think she's made it very clear already that it's not even an option on the table, right? She feels as if by taxing these corporations and these individuals who are earning over 1 million a year, 2%, it's going to drive them out the city. Now, do I totally agree with that? No, I think New York City offers something that is lucrative. I think New York City is the financial capital of the world. I don't think that these billionaires are all going to disappear overnight. That's my personal take on it. Should she eventually look at these options? Absolutely. I honestly believe that the wealth gap has grown so excessively. These corporations have made billions upon billions on the backs of working people. And then you look at the Wall Street bonuses this year, right? Wall Street has done extremely well this year. So, and I'm not saying Wall Street has not covered a lot of the public goods that we're talking about, whether it's infrastructure and other things that we need their support, and as they pay their taxes and the Wall Street bonuses come in. But at the same time, it is absolutely something that we should never take off the table. And whose side are we on? Are we on the side of the workers, who are trying to skate by at Amazon? Are we are going to stand for the mom and pop store, the person washing the dishes, the street vendor on Corona Plaza? Those are the people I want to stand with, and I think billionaires have done extremely well. And absolutely, we eventually have to find the political courage to get this done.
There is criticism, though, that these these big businesses, these wealthy corporations, they hear the potential of this wealth tax, they're out. They leave New York, they go to a more tax friendly state. Or if you have someone making over $1 million in this post COVID world where they can work anywhere, they could say, you know what, when's enough? Why am I paying this much when I could go to a more tax friendly state? Then they leave, their tax revenue streams gone. I mean, what do you say to that?
Well, the bottom line is Florida is a nice place, but it's not New York City. Texas is a nice place. It is not New York City. And I think they will find that, one, our workforce here is so potent, right? Our vibrancy, we've had a lot of issues coming through COVID, but we can see that the city is becoming safer, right? We had one of the safest Januaries in history in New York City under the Mamdani administration. So I of course, don't want to lose any money, but I would find it hard that we would see this huge flight of billionaires out of New York City. I mean, they love their penthouses on Fifth Avenue. I mean, where are you getting that in Wyoming? It could be tax friendlier, but it's not New York City.
I know that historically during an election year, saying, hey, I'm going to raise taxes on X, Y, or Z, that's not usually popular, right, amongst voters. Do you think the fact that it is an election year, do you think that's having any impact on how Governor Hochul is saying, I'm not raising taxes on the rich here?
Well, listen, I mean, politics is always going to play into, especially during a campaign year. So, I know the governor. I worked extremely close with her. She's done very good by Queens County, but also, this is an election year, and she does have a general election. And I meant for her to say, I'm going to support 9.5% increase in property taxes is giving Bruce Blakeman a great talking point, even as the Democrats try to take back the House, make Hakeem Jeffries the Speaker of the House. We don't need to give Republicans talking points. This is what the Dems are going to do. You see, they just want to tax you. They want to tax the middle class. I mean, I could write the script myself, right? So I think the timing definitely is not great. And if I'm the governor, it's playing into my equation as well. But also the governor just dropped 1.5 billion extra to the city. I think Mayor Mamdani can arguably go back to her and the state leaders and say, hey, we need a little bit more. So the gap, originally was 12 billion, a little bit over 12 billion. Then it comes down to 7. And then, yesterday it came down to, I think, about 5.4 billion. So, there are a myriad of things we can be looking at. One of the things I always, as somebody who sat on the budget negotiating team in the council, said is we need to look at police overtime. The police department excessively abuses their overtime. So could we look at cost savings there? The Center for the Urban Future, I think, put out a plan today. Could we do parking permits and charge? Could we put up more parking meters, which would generate close to 1.3 billion in revenue a year, right? So we need to look at every tool in the toolkit and toolbox before we go to the middle class and say, you're going to pay for it again. The middle class always bails out the city. And it's about time that Wall Street does it, not Main Street.
Do you think then that this was Mayor Mamdani trying to negotiate in a perhaps tough way, saying there is no option 3, option 1, Governor Hochul, if you don't tax the wealthy, then we have no choice, our hands are tied. We are giving the middle class in New York this property tax increase. We're hiking up those taxes. That's not popular by really anyone I've talked to so far. Then we have Governor Hochul saying, I'm not doing that tax increase. So what do you think option 3 is? And how would a potential option 3, despite Mamdani saying there is no option 3, how would that make New York more affordable for the everyday New Yorker?
Listen, I think the property tax reform stuff, like if he can do that, that can yield billions in itself, right? Making people pay their fair share of taxes. Somebody in central Brooklyn or southeast Queens should not be paying more than some brownstone owner in Park Slope whose brownstone is worth $5 million, opposed to a home that's worth $700,000. We're paying 5 times the amount on property taxes than that owner. So absolutely, that should be option 3. I know he's sending a bill to Albany to examine this and to have them examine this. And then just getting back to options 1 and 2, and him. And if you know anything about the governor, she doesn't necessarily run from a fight, and she's pretty firm. So she's saying it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And maybe next year. I mean, I don't want to say we should do these things because it's an election year. It's not an election year. I think we do as Democrats have to look at this seriously. I think anybody, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, conservative, whatever you are, progressive, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is billionaires are making more and our city's becoming less affordable. So we do have to solve for this issue in the long term. But in the short term, what we can do is definitely look at those efficiencies through his saving officers in each agency. Go back to the state. I'll go lobby Kathy Hochul for more money if I need to. Count me in on that. And then thirdly, let's get this property tax reform stuff done, because I think that will enable us in the long term to close these gaps.
President Richards, I really appreciate the conversation today and your perspective. And as we see developments on the budget conversation and more coming out of New York, I hope you can join me. Thanks for the time. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you for having me.